So this is okay. Go, Vanity, go. Hello there. Thank you all for coming here. I know it's really warm. I've just had hot flushes, so if it gets too warm, so sure we can always fit with the air conditioning. Welcome to the Q&A sessions. You guys are going to have a lot of questions. First of all, where's Debs and who's this dodgy-looking scruffy guy in front of us here? Debs, she's in the States at the moment, doing the most awesome training with her daughters who are doing the cheerleading. So I'm stepping into her glamorous shoes. Don't judge me. And basically, this is basically a mental health Q&A session for whatever questions, queries, concerns, worries, confusions you might have. Just chuck them at me, and we'll just take it from there. I've been in the scene now for about, I was like leather. I was 6 years old when I was drooling over Tarzan in his leather loincloth, and it just went from there. I'm also working as it is called the BDSM affirmative therapist, but I indicate this that I'm part of the scene, and I'm very transparent in my therapy work with this as well, and this is going to be a running theme. I always tell my client I'm always going to put the cards on the table. Please do so as well. I also terrify a lot of the English clients of mine when I tell them, leave your stiff English upper lip outside of my therapy space. It doesn't help at all. And eventually, that applies for you as well. But don't push it. But then eventually they get into the groove of things, and then things get more transparent, and the stress levels come down. So my cue to shamelessly plug myself. This is about questions in languages as well. Pick any language you feel comfortable in. That's fine. I'm also doing, for that reason, our Cunning Linguist Munch, where we talk anything kink related in the languages we're comfortable at. It could be English, it could be any of the European languages or whatever. But this is another place where we can share our hearts with however we feel comfortable in. So, and I'm doing the London Metal Munch if you're into proper rock and roll and heavy metal. Anyway, enough about me. Questions, folks.
Right, came in pretty well, actually, just caught up on while you were sitting here before. Just playing off the little discussion we had, podcasts and mental health.
Spoiler alert, he hasn't seen it yet.
I'm not going to talk about it.
Oh,
I haven't seen it either, so yeah.
Good, okay.
Absolutely. Spoiler alert, don't talk about it. But we were listening to a podcast on the way in, and the chap was talking about, in one part of it, about buried memories that he had, areas in his life where he had buried memories, and he was going, I really should dive into that. Whereas I've come from a place where I've had 10 plus years of therapy, traumatic experience breakdown 10 so years ago, very traumatic childhood side of things, and I don't really remember anything from pre-8. And my thinking is, let sleeping dogs lie. There's shit in there, and I know there's shit in there that I'm not really worried about finding out about. And we've previously discussed about how there's a lot of BDSM related to trauma and trauma related to BDSM. So what do you think about people needing or wanting or diving into suppressed memories? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it something, if you're going to do it, you need to really buddy up well with a really good therapist?
Yeah. Have you guys heard about, especially in the 1970s and 80s, this made the rounds? The key psychologist who wrote books about this was Elizabeth Loftus. She wrote about the suppressed memories. And in many instances, as it then later showed, there weren't any. However, a lot of psychologists, they inadvertently were quite manipulative and planted certain things. Actually, they wanted to help. This is one of my slight concerns. So, first of all, I don't know what you exactly mean in your context when you say suppressed memories. But sleeping dogs, if you want to make the choice to make them lie and sleep, fair enough. This is the thing about trigger warnings, and we've been discussing this many a times. Inherently, there isn't that much use to announce trigger warnings because none of us would ever be aware what we possibly could do and say that might trigger someone else because you don't know someone else's history. This is where this comes in now. And obviously, I'm going to be biased and I'm going to push for therapy. But the reason why I do this here is so that you precisely are aware. The more you get to know yourself and your history, even if you have really ugly and traumatic chapters, the more you're on top of it and the more you have managed to shed light on it with the help of therapists or so, the less likely you trigger it. Does this make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the reasons why I always suggest as well, whenever you guys play, start small. Always check with each other, are we okay? You guys use the traffic light system, yeah? Green is for awesome, go. Amber is, I'm not quite sure, go easy. Red is stop. And this is one of the reasons why I always suggest, and why most Kingsters properly are doing this, to suggest go slow, small steps, so that you precisely are aware, should you trigger someone, that you can instantly hold him or her and just hold the space. So it's a big area. We just discussed this as well, the thing about trauma, and how parts of that we hadn't quite properly resolved could come up. Not even just in kink play, but possibly there. But even in our everyday situations, this is an issue. I get this a lot in my therapy work, where suddenly someone in an everyday situation suddenly had a panic attack, and he or she had no idea what triggered it. You know, so hope this makes sense. So work on yourselves, and by the way, this is precisely one of the reasons why we're doing Q&A sessions. Ask questions and continue the conversations with your partners, with your play partners. It's a constant process of exploration. The better we know ourselves, the more fun we're going to have, and the safer we're going to be as well. So,
I've had trauma myself, and probably some people here. And I got a book quite a while ago, and I read it, and there's exercises to doing it. Dr. Laurie Beck,
yeah,
she did a couple of books, Dancing the Edge of Surrender, Reclaiming Your Reality. So it's all about shadow work and all that kind of stuff. But in it, the exercises are to watch some TED Talks. And there was one from a lady called Bryony Brown that I watched.
Yes, Bryony Brown.
And even though I've had therapy, and I mean, if you can call it, I'm cured from my trauma, I've learned to deal with it and move on in my life, and it's not holding me back. But it wasn't up until recently by because she talks about shame and the amount of shame that we feel in our lives when certain things come up. And I actually felt shame for what I went through, and I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly learning from my experience as a trauma survivor, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So just sort of sharing
Yeah.
that it progresses, and it's a constant healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. The shaming, by the way, usually when the feeling of shame kicks in, it's usually at sub drop at the end of a session. Have you noticed this? When suddenly the hormones just sort of crash and you just feel particularly vulnerable. And this is one of the definitions of sub drop. You just really need someone to hold you. In my books, shame is usually a residue of the one who used to do the shaming when you were quite a bit younger.
Yeah.
It's sort of a lingering voice that's still there somehow.
Like a taboo.
Yeah, kind of. And it's remember, normality is cultural. So however we've been brought up is kind of what we know. That's our template. And then we grow older, and then we get to know more about ourselves, and then we find out that we're LGBT and that we're Kingsters. And then we have a massive clash to how we've been brought up. Even the most liberal parents, you still don't want to talk about everything we do here, and why should we? But the emotional aspect, the slight feeling of shame, that still might linger on, you know. So I can say this with authority. I come from a Muslim background, so there's a
Yeah,
just put it in yourself. Seriously. But this is one of the hallmarks of us being adults, hence why I'm pushing as well for therapy. You guys can make good choices if you don't know what's best for you. Look out there for the therapists who will be working with you non-judgmentally. Hang around with friends. This is part of the community. And work on yourselves without any value judgment. It's a process. It's a learning process.
I think the great antidote for shame is talking about it.
Absolutely.
Shame just remains when it's
Yeah.
kept top secret.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm
Once
an
you're on
old
top
sharer.
of it,
I
it's
don't share with everybody. But I think even though I was sharing to try and feel that it would not cure me, but make me feel better about my trauma, it was, oh, shame. Oh, okay. Like at the time, I didn't realise it, but I actually was shaming myself for what happened when I shouldn't have done. So I think it was just another layer to it that I actually unpacked and I learned about it. And I was like, oh, okay, I understand it. I now know what it means, and I just move on.
And
So I'm fine with that.
let me elaborate here in the context of shaming, which is a residue from the soundtracks from our childhood. It's another reason why I'm nudging you guys to repeatedly keep on exploring and to talk. Because the more you explore your Kingster selves, the more you get an awareness of how you are now as the adults here. And the clearer that awareness, the more you can differentiate how you feel and act and are right now, as opposed to maybe the traumatized former younger selves of yours. The more you can differentiate it, the better in itself it is for you to realize, old shaming soundtrack, I really don't need this anymore. Fuck off. Anyway, you know. It's something you can practice. There's always something that lingers on from our childhood. A lot of the stuff is good stuff, and the things we don't need anymore. The more you are aware of this, the more you can tell yourself, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I pay attention to this instead. It's my lovely partner here. Maintain it. Neurologically, you're going to create your neural pathways. The more you repeatedly shift your attention to your play partner you really get on with, eventually, really, your habits change for the better. So that's why it's called neuroplasticity. Your brain adapts to your changing environment. This is how actually people do manage to give up smoking, to are more on top of their drinking. So, okay, I'm asked a lot as a therapist, how do people change? No, they don't. But we can change certain habits, especially when we realize that they aren't good for us. And this applies as well to the things we might have picked up from our childhood. We really don't need anymore because they might be self-destructive or they might be self-defeating. So,
Don't you think we're always in a constant state of change? No, I don't think I've finished my journey of maturing.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I like what you said about unpacking. For me, 10 years of therapy was about deconstructing and reconstructing.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Yeah.
Therapy is fantastic.
Certain things you might need to bring particular attention to it so that you can really change from then onwards. Hence the thing about trauma therapy. So, and it is hard work, but good on you.
When you was talking about like your childhood and stuff like that, my old therapist, who I get on really well with, she told me about a book, which cause she did a lot of like, she works with children, does a lot of like family dynamic-y kind of stuff. She's psychodynamic therapy. That was her bag. And she told me about this book, and it's called The Dance of Anger by Harriet G. Lerner, or Lena, something like that. And it's all about women. I think it'd be a good book for men and women to read. But she talks. It's all about women's anger and how we hold it, and then she'll talk about some of her clients and the different dynamics of why there's problems and like all that kind of stuff. And I found that quite interesting because it teaches you what the relationship dynamics are with like your mum, your dad, your siblings, and the problems. But she talks about change, and that's what you were saying. You can change how you approach that situation with that person, which will then manifest the relationship to take a different path, rather than attacking and going, why can't you change? And which I found quite interesting what you said.
Yeah, it's and sometimes we really need to let go. If we really want to change someone, it means we're already idealizing someone to a person we ultimately would like him or her to be. It doesn't work. We wouldn't like anyone to do to us as well. So what you guys can do, you can coordinate yourselves, you can make compromises and be very tolerant and learn with each other's oddities, creddities and idiosyncrasies. And if it really doesn't work at all, maybe then the relationship really might not be working. So, but don't attempt to change someone. It doesn't work, and it isn't fair. So. Any other questions, folks?
I have a question.
Oh.
I said that really loudly just in case. And also, I was going to ask this question to my therapist, but she rescheduled. So now it's your problem now.
Yes, bring it on.
Okay, so say you're someone, you're going through a period of change, right? You were one person before. You identified something that needed to change. You started going through that change. You're doing really well at going through that change, but every now and then things happen. And your brain starts to go, maybe I could still be the person I was before, right? And you know that from a few experiences that that's just your brain trying to trick you because it's safer back there.
Mm.
How do you know if it's tricking you or whether it's actually real and whether you just missed something along the way?
If that is safer, that means you're trying to escape to your safe zone. Then I would ask what it is you're afraid of.
Do I have to answer that here?
No. As a therapist, I would ask it. Because if there's a need for a safe zone, that means there is something else you're really afraid of, or you're quite sure what's that about. Okay. I'd rather push you to focus on instead. You see, us therapists, we have to be a bit sadistic. Our job really is to push our clients out of their comfort zone because this is where change happens. And I always assure my clients, look, I'll be with you first step by step, as long as you're doing the first steps. But that might be something I would ask of you as well. What is it that's to safe in your comfort zone, as opposed to?
I'm trying to use code, right? So what's safe in my comfort zone is it's what a lot of people do already. Whereas what I'm going for is what a select group of people.
Take care. That means you're following the masses.
Yeah, and it's easier because then you can just be like, oh, see, I'm one of you. I just haven't quite got it yet. Whereas you go the other way and you're like,
Take care. You know what they say about following the masses. In German, there's a saying, wenn man den Rudel folgt, sieht man nur Arschlöcher. If you're following the flock, all you see is assholes. Take care. Take care. You're just going to remember this one today, won't you? But this is the reason why we Kingsters. We do the things, and talking about comfort zone, allow yourself to go there, because that actually might be your more authentic self. You see, that's the thing about authenticity. Don't be afraid. It's a political thing as well, what we're doing here. I'm being hardcore here now, typical German. But we have to be aware that most of the things what we're doing is going to be completely beyond comprehension or approval by the dominant society. We've got, I'd really recommend, have a look at the legal aspect of what we do as Kingsters. You'd be surprised how many things are blatantly illegal. There it is. Guys, this is really important. Offences Against the Persons Act. It is from 1861. I actually do think there's a parallel example of the licensing laws in this country that also have not been updated, that go back to the First World War, where the ammunition workers needed to be sober. And this is what I mean with the politics of things. Certain laws simply aren't updated because it serves perfectly well the people who run the country. However, we have moved on. Do you see the clash here? Hence why we really need to be aware of what we're doing, and this is such a good example. And we have to, hence why I'm constantly pushing you guys, keep on talking, keep on researching, keep on working on yourselves so that we're all safe. There was another point I was about to make. But yeah, I'd recommend have a read. It's a very sobering read how conservative this country still is. And if you ask me, I think that's done on purpose, just to control the masses. The political aspect. One of the definitions of being a Kingster is precisely that we allow ourselves to do what we like with the consent of the other adult partner. That's it. Whatever else we do is not contingent on the approval or comprehension of anyone else. There you go. we still need to make sure that everyone is safe. But you know, unless I'm missing out something here, am I being too much of a liberal?
I was just saying, I mean, usually Deb asks anyone here ever had a love bite. If you've had a love bite, you've actually broken the law.
Because a love bites. Yeah,
It's
thank you.
more than trifling or transient.
I would have to ask
Well,
for
they're not
the
right.
definitions of trifling and
Yeah.
transient.
Yes. Well, that is the definition.
But that is the definition.
Yeah.
Do you see how loosely phrased that is? So if anyone gives you a hickey, that person is actually illegal according to these laws. Has done an illegal criminal act.
Thankfully, what's happened since that act has come in is the police have had some education. But it does mean that a third party can cause it. So if you're on the train and you happen to have handcuff marks or bruises anywhere, an observer can call the police and report on your behalf that you've been abused.
But that's their assumption, though.
But that's what the law allows you to do because you cannot consent to actual bodily harm. So what Craig and I both know this. What you usually do is if you want to use, if it's legitimate, because you always have to protect people who have been abused. But Craig and I will say you've either done martial arts, rock climbing, or wrestling, which covers most of the martial arts.
Yeah, precisely.
Oh, right, okay, there you go.
It comes from domestic abuse.
Yes.
That a woman won't report
Yeah.
it because of her age. It means that the other party can. It's like the police will prosecute without evidence.
So that one came about unfortunately through that's the 1861. It's the other one that's up there now is the came out of Project Spanner.
Yeah.
Where a group of men in private property were carrying out certain acts
In their own home.
in their own home. Admittedly, it was on the far end of things, i.e., they were nailing their testicles to planks of wood. As you do.
Just a normal Sunday afternoon.
They, even though it was fully consensual, they were consenting to it because some bird videoed it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a bit silly, wasn't
Well,
it?
then when the police raided, everyone went to prison for assault.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I mean, no one thinks that says, have any of you got naughty pictures on your phones? Do not take your phone through customs because they're allowed to look at it.
Certain countries they cross-check. They ask you for your password. They might check your Facebook history or so. And if there are any pictures, especially with, I think when there are wounds, when someone has got a proper spanking.
Well, it's also it's the trend because I took an 8-year break between 2004 and the pandemic, and when I came back, suddenly marking was popular. Whereas when I was doing it, it was I didn't want not to mark, i.e., you could play for a period of time and leave no marks. Now it's the other way, and suddenly you look at it going, "Oh, I'm not too sure on that." So yeah, it's gotten very dicey. Thankfully, I said the police being educated. They still look, but yeah, customs and excise have no sense of humour whatsoever. So if you do have spicy photos on your phone, either blank it or upload it somewhere else before you go through.
You're right about the countries. I mean, Singapore. You can't don't go through Singapore with anything like any toys. It's pornography, and you will get penalised.
Oh, don't have rainbow flags with you either.
Really?
Coldplay wasn't allowed on stage because they had rainbow flags.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea.
Singapore.
Singapore. So you need to do the research on the countries that you
Yeah.
pass through.
Glass toys come out excellently on X-rays.
Can I just extend that about customs?
Yeah.
If you go to America, they have something called the border zone. It's anywhere within 100 miles of a land or sea border, which means the entirety of New York, the entirety of Florida is considered in a border zone, which means they can pull you over at any time, even at Disneyland. Even when you just
When you're inland, that's the thing to say.
Yeah.
It's inland.
They can pull you over at any time, and they'll say, "We're just going to do a quick border check. We need your passport. We need to see your phone." So be very careful within America.
Apart from that, crack on and do what you do. Have 2 phones.
You were raising your hand. Do you remember the question?
Yes, I can't remember exactly how I was phrasing it, but it was when we were talking about conflict. And oh gosh, what was it? Oh, it was just around like how would you kind of suggest someone, I don't know, helps themselves a little bit if they're struggling a little bit with their kind of view of how they should act ethically versus what they actually enjoy. So, for example, take degradation. sports, any form of sadism or something, if you enjoy these things, but you know, you've been taught since you were year dot, you treat people well, you treat people nicely,
Yeah, precisely.
but this kind of flies against that.
Yeah.
How do you kind of deal with the conflict that may be inside you during those moments?
You see, one is the degradation thing, that's the king self talking.
Mhm.
And it clashes with the adult self that we are now. We're meant to be responsible people. And but that is a different part of ours. Remember, you can explain to your partner that, look, to all of our personalities, there are different facets. We have the public self, we have the family self, we have the professional self, we have our intimate and kinky selves.
Mm.
So this would be the focus. And that's fine. And that isn't beyond value judgment, as long as you both consent.
Mhm.
You know.
True.
It's likely that the person's going to have a massive sub drop though and feeling a bit ashamed possibly. In that case, and discuss it through. But we have different aspects of ourselves. We have different needs. So, and sometimes they can clash. Yeah.
I've definitely found that in the last 12, 18 months or something where I'm like, oh, I really enjoy this. I don't like that I enjoy this. This is not a nice thing. It's that shame.
That works on the dom side. As well.
Yeah.
Because
That's what
I'm
I'm-
a
yeah.
feminist,
Yeah.
and if I dom her,
Mhm.
it goes against
Yeah.
me.
Contradictions.
Yeah, and then I have a dom drop.
Yes.
So you talk about soft drop, I have a dom
I've not
drop.
experienced that yet, but I've definitely got a whole in life. I'm like really nice and lovely. I'm looking after you on, but in another world, I'm like, I quite like doing these things to you.
Guys, in simple terms, our genitals are not politically correct. The political correctness, that is in our prefrontal cortex, where we managed later in our, I'm coming back to you, in our later evolutionary development to rein in our emotions, where we managed to be social, draw clear boundaries, be political, be philosophical, do the abstract planning and thinking. That is the adult selves up here, which by the way takes between the ages of 25 to 30 to finish developing. And it finishes from the back forward. So hence why teenagers and 20-year-olds, they are basically acting the way they do because they haven't quite reached biological even maturity yet. Hence the clash as well. So,
Just going on from what you were saying about like, oh, I like this, but and what we see, it's not right. And we was upstairs sitting down, chatting about it, and we was chatting about a few people that we have seen in the kink scene, and especially when you get like your I don't want to say again, we're new into this, so please don't take any offence to any of it because I don't know. Everyone's dynamic is different. You know, we could all be in an MS or a DS, but it's all custom to each individual person and couple. But it's funny how you go back to that masses attitude when we've seen DOMs that are like I would say controlling DOMs, but they are controlling their sub, and their sub in some respects is a woman, and as a woman and being quite, you know, I'm an independent woman and all
talking
that.
about clashes, yes.
And then it's like, and then you're thinking, oh, I don't like the fact that he's pulling her hair and forcing her this way, or telling you can't speak. And like even when the first time I came here, I was at the after party, and there was this this couple, and he was flogging. His flogging was amazing, and I started to talk to her, but I was very hesitant because I'm like, I'm not in a normal social setting here, and I'm like, and I was waiting for him to say you can talk, but it's not like that. And you know, you just think to yourself like, it's that constant pushback in my head. And I'm like, when is this going to shut down? So that I just find
Never
it.
does.
No, because it's
It never does. I thought, well, better word. Always don't ever respect women, but then there are women who want to be deliberately disrespected because they get off on it. I have a friend who literally comes around to other feminists
You see,
but it's in the context of that scene. They were lovely and cuddly and friendly after, but she gets off on the fact that her challenge is, while being flogged, can she actually get out feminist rhetoric while I'm flogged? Absolutely hilarious. Where the fuck did that come from? But I always treat my play as a game. I've never been BIPOC type. I've never been a domineering type, which is different from dominant. I've never regarded myself as a dominant, more a doer, and I play with doies. People like having things done to them.
Yeah.
So I always used to get in trouble because we'd be laughing, and always people went, "That's serious. This is serious," and we'd be wetting ourselves. Like, this is hilarious.
I love that.
It's called play for a reason. That's for me. That's
But the thing is, it's really, I said,
It's meant to be played, seriously.
Yeah.
Don't take yourself too seriously, but seriously enough.
but I have to keep reminding myself, she has probably not put, see, this is where the masses, she probably has consented to that because
Yes.
it's
yes.
unpractical within society, but it's like, we don't know their dynamic, you can't assume that, oh, she's being abused, because your brain just automatically goes back to that shit. You know?
One more thing I'd like to elaborate
I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have, so you're saying between 20 and 30 years, on the back forward it works.
Yeah.
So you've had 30 years of what I would call social conditioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you had 30 years of social conditioning, depending on when you get thinking. Because somebody was telling me once I did a depression workshop and stuff like that. It takes as long to undo the engram
Yes.
as it does.
Yes.
So if you've done something for a decade, it can take a decade to rewire that part of your brain.
This is one of the reasons why I'm not doing regards to self-introspection. Embrace your kinks and own it. It's there for a reason. It's part of you. So there is no point in trying to hide it.
So what I'm saying is, if you've had 30 years of social conditioning,
Yeah.
and you're going to try and undo it, you're not going to undo it.
It's got to take ages. Ask anyone who had to give up cigarettes. It takes ages.
Do you think it's different depending on those of us when we were first exposed to kink? So if your brain is developing and then kink comes along in your 20s,
I'd say there's differences, and it's
I would say so because you
as
have
opposed to
to
those people who discover it later.
precise. I think you have to confront yourself what's going on quite earlier. So you most likely have a longer learning trajectory. I'd say so.
At that I've got when I got divorced, my sister, lovely, kind woman, said, "You know, it takes as long as you were in the relationship to get over the relationship." It was a 25-year
Mine was
disaster.
28.
But 5 years later, it's individual, and it depends on the circumstances and what was
I'll be with you, Mike.
and how you've been helped.
Can I just elaborate again on the clash, and I'll be with you as well. I've seen it. Sorry. The kind of thing which is interesting here, the feminist thing. So inherently, what your friend was doing is trying to rationalize something that is in itself not rational. Guys, don't forget this. Hence why I've given you the genital analogy. What our kings aren't commonsensical or rational, but that doesn't make them any less valid. Do you see the differentiation here? This is important. It is still valid and important what we're into. I like rock and roll. I don't know why, but I do. You know, I love tiramisu. I know. But we don't, and it's really important. And I like leather, obviously, as you see. You know, but we don't owe anyone's explanations either. This is really important. We have to defend ourselves much more.
Back to my previous point, and I'll shush because I know
Go for
it's
it,
just
yeah.
back to the previous one. My friend, when I first told her, like, oh, I'm quite enjoying certain aspects of degradation and stuff, she's like, I knew there was a side of you somewhere. She's like, I've watched you for 25 years beat yourself up. I'm not treating people well enough. I'm not being nice enough. She's like, she called me pious. She was like, you act quite pious a lot of the time on how you treat people and what you think is right. And she was like, and now that you're starting to explore this side of yourself, and I can see that there's sides of you that actually maybe aren't so nice, and she thinks it's fucking great. And I'm like,
I like your phrasing, by the way, side of yourself. That's precisely what it is. It's a different facet of ours. It's a different side of ours. Yes.
Back to the clash with feminism. Ask Bong. So I believe she was a German woman, I can't remember her name, but there's a woman who went to, I don't know, a festival or something, and allowed hundreds of people to smoke from an arse bomb from her arse while she was completely naked. Yeah, and she did that as an act of protest against patriarchy. And if you think 50 years ago, and this is roughly what she was saying, 50 years ago, a woman would not have been allowed, would not have been trusted to make the choice, I'm going to go to a party and allow hundreds of people to smoke from my asshole. 200 years ago, women probably would have had a forced hysterectomy. So I think really it's the choice. We are now in a very liberated, hopefully more or less liberated state where women have the choice to do these things. Women have the choice
Yeah.
to be in a, 100% 1950s style relationship where the man makes all the decisions. But now we have the choice, and we have the choice not to do
Yeah.
that or to do that. And I think that's the huge difference. Ask God.
Fantastic example. Can I give another one? Can I give another example? Have you guys heard of Annie Sprinkle?
Yes.
Post-porn feminist performance artist. She made the rounds pretty much globally by inviting the audience to have a look at a vagina. She had a speculum inserted by an assistant, and then the audience was invited to queue nicely and look what a woman looks like from the inside. And she instigated it, and she was entranced throughout that. And it was really educational. Yes, I was in the queue as well. But this is precisely, sometimes we do have to take our freedoms and claim it, Hence why I said it is political. Look at Iran now. Now women in Iran, they take off their chadors and burn it. And a lot of them have lost their lives. It is an ongoing battle. Not to mention LGBT people across the world who have to the rainbow thing. Don't you dare having rainbows the further east you go in Europe. It was gone.
I didn't put my hand up twice because it was so on topic, and then if the topic changed, it would have hurt me deeply. Because what I'm hearing is we talked about different sides of ourselves that we wear in different circumstances,
Yes.
and then to use like Jungian terms, which I'm going to use throughout this, we have the shadow side of that as well, which is where the shame comes in, because we're like, oh, we're not sure if we can accept the shadow. Now, let's say you're someone like me who's been doing that and wearing those masks, and you don't have the mental capacity to keep switching between them anymore. What kind of work can you do on yourself to become like the woman who, did that? I can't remember her name. Anna Sprinkle.
And a sprinkle.
Anna Sprinkle. How do you become someone like that and weave all of those sides of yourself together so that you're actually one individuated?
Very small steps. You gradually allow yourself just to be that tad more authentic. I usually give this as a homework to my subs. I have regularly subs who don't even dare to wear a leather jacket out in public or at work or so. And I give them that as a homework. Small steps. Just allow yourself to wear what you ultimately would really like to. So I ask myself, look, just start with a nice leather tie at work maybe. Or just wear a nice vest and go out and about. And then keep going. And eventually you're going to get really close. And as I said, it's a learning process.
I don't know how many
Allow
guys
yourself.
dropped out of the train whilst I was walking through it. And as you can see, I'm not very.
Quite liberal.
I am quite. I'm not, but I'm not though. I think what I'm wearing is quite sort of like normal-ish, and people are still looking. I'm like, and so I can imagine that even just by wearing like a leather vest, it's like fucking hell. It's just like you're constantly thinking like who's around you, and everyone's looking at you.
But in Great British style, it's usually because of the time of day and the day.
It's on a Sunday.
Sunday and midday. If that
Yeah.
Saturday or
And then
Friday
he's going,
evening, no one about a line.
and then he's going put your ice back in. He's like, there's about a dozen eyes back there on the floor.
I don't try to overthink what people are thinking, because if you look around now, look around upstairs, one of the things I love about coming here is the normality of everything.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's the
And-
point.
and
Establish your own normality.
You cannot tell from looking at somebody what they're into. Now, we can see that you have a penchant for leather. It's a guess. But,
How commendable you don't judge a book by its cover.
can tell from you. You've got a t-shirt and jeans on.
Tell
Now-
them what you said. Sorry to interrupt. Tell them what you said upstairs the first time you came here,
Oh, I find
and how.
I found it weirdly comfortable.
Yeah, it's great.
And
The point I want to make is, next time somebody's looking at you in the train, just look around. And you will not be able to tell who on the train is looking at you because they don't like what you're wearing, or looking at you because they wish they could be wearing.
Or because they admire you.
And
So-
can I
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
I don't actually give a fuck.
No,
Because I'm not running through the train naked. I haven't got my
Yeah.
excuse my I haven't got my flange out, I haven't got my boobs out. So, like, sorry, guys. So the thing is, it's open to interpretation, and the thing is, that's your problem.
It is somebody else's problem, but it's also a case of everybody's different and you can't tell.
No.
Some people will be wishing they were you, some people are wishing you weren't there, and ultimately it doesn't matter.
On a random one with that, where would the decency doors?
Speak up. So,
Where would the decency doors kick in?
And that's
How would
interesting.
law be really?
It's been a while since I looked at a tenancy agreement, but the last tenancy agreement I had this clause in it where you wouldn't use the house for immoral purposes. Now,
however, that's
Well,
defined.
that's
actually
open
was
to
that.
interpretation.
There is no definition.
You're on rules there, right?
No, there is no definition of immoral apart from what the magistrate or the judge.
Societal norms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, this is also how actually society changes. Imagine all of you guys just what's in your fucking go for it, and it would spread. That would change the normality of the dominant society when most people would just see much more people wearing fabulous black and some rubber items and awesome hair, and eventually this would be. Remember, this is one of the reasons why I said normality is cultural. This is one of the reasons why people
And
love
you get
coming
away
to
with a lot.
London.
You get away with a lot more. You get away with a lot more in London than you would anywhere else.
But this is one of the reasons why we are always drawn to bigger cities. We inherently are safer.
Yeah.
So keep going. Allow yourself to really be your authentic self. There is Oscar Wilde said this fabulously at the time. Be yourself. Who else do you want to be? Everyone else is taken.
I've actually kissed his grave, by the way. I know I shouldn't have done, but
Wonderful.
Not the one next to the urinal.
no.
Was that in Dublin? I did it.
No, Pen of Shares.
Oh,
Well,
wonderful. In France, of course.
His actual
Yes,
grave.
of
And I went
course.
to Jim Morrison's grave as well.
Good.
Strong.
Of course.
I love that place.
Yeah. One of the most beautiful cemeteries.
It is absolutely, it's
Wonderful.
huge.
It's
Beautiful.
huge.
Edith Park there and all that, yeah, love it.
Knowing that cemetery, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. In Paris.
Yeah, I think I go
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Yes, mate.
So you've been talking a lot about how society restricts us a lot, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes what we feel is wrong is not real, but rather construct. But also, how do you know that your desire is not a construct, that it's your actually authentic self desire, but not something which was like brought into you by media or
Your gut feeling will tell you this. And your true desires, they usually have history. So, Sartre said, I'm not one going to quote, Sartre said this once in just 2 words: l'enfance décide, childhood decides. So most of your kings have history. It is unlikely. We get sometimes influenced and then we find out, yeah, I quite like this. But the major kings of our lives, they usually have history. Whatever your preferences are for your partners, the things you see when you masturbate, it has history. So ask yourself, your gut feeling will tell you, no, this is really something I'm really into. And anything else might have been what we discussed, the clashes you might experience from your socialization, from your upbringing, your social environment as a child, what you might have gotten from your parents or so.
Does it matter as long as you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Because it's an issue if you don't.
As long as it's not hurting you,
Seriously.
How do you tell as a therapist that distinguish between someone who's experiencing a kink, who likes pain and like cutting or something because they're getting off on it, versus someone who's suffering from trauma, it's really apply for help? I mean, is there a way?
To be honest, at first I wouldn't, but usually this emerges the longer I'm working with my client. I see certain patterns, and this is what I'd usually work with, And actually, when I notice that there is possibly a trauma or so, abuse, until that is resolved, I actually do tell my cancer clients, go easy with your play. You're likely to be re-traumatized unless this is resolved. This is quite important. But yes, instantly I also wouldn't know. So if you guys, there are some warning signs usually. When you guys play and someone is triggered, which is usually manifesting in a disproportional response, according to just what you were doing, that usually means, oh, I think I've touched on something here. So just take the time out and explore. and just hold each other safely. And regularly explore. The more you get to know someone, and this applies for my therapy clients as it would apply to you, the more you get to know your play partners, the more you're going to find out your tender spots and the things you know you can just play rough with. So.
I just want to go, because you're saying about like stopping, don't do the kink until they've sorted it out. But I mean, surely some things might be kind of in the arms. Some things might never go away fully. Like if you wait.
Absolutely. The stopping was in the context of trauma. Should there be something that is unresolved? As long as it's still unresolved and a work in progress, I advise to go easy with the kink play, especially if it's related. Hence the example of the self-cutting or so. This is usually how people can be re-triggered. You might have, you see, our sexual selves might tell ourselves, "Oh, I really fancy doing this," but actually, our childhood selves might not have resolved it, might still be suffering from this. When there's a crossover, you could be re-triggered. And this is usually that gets clearer during therapy work. And the more people resolve their demons as such, whatever that might have traumatized them, the safer the kink play. So.
If someone just was to randomly cry but they feel fine, would that be a warning sign?
I would check. Could be. Ask questions. Could be. Stay with them.
What was the question? Randomly cry. I didn't quite hear it.
Oh, I said because I've seen it before where people have just cried and then you check they're okay, but actually they're like, I'm fine, but they don't really know why they're having that response. So that's probably like subspace, though, isn't it? It's like maybe like an emotion. Just wondering if there could be like a hidden trauma.
Surge of emotions.
That's what I would
I find it a lot easier to deal with the crying side of it than someone I know who breaks out into unstoppable Joker-like laughter. It's quite.
But both are responses, and I would stay with it.
I mean, his is because we did ask him. He can't control it. But when you get used to it, it's just it is very much like the Joker.
And what I would do, I wouldn't put any value judgments on it, and I wouldn't necessarily instantly always assume trauma. Let's not catastrophize here either, but explore, see what's going on.
Could just be a release of some
Precisely. Good luck,
Yeah.
Check on.
Yeah.
That makes you a good player, essentially.
It's I felt for him because of the uncontrollable nature. Like once he set off, he just couldn't stop.
Oh
It
God.
was like 15 or 20 minutes.
It's not that long, but it does come out. And I think it's partly, a release, like you said, like, because it's either that or I'm going to scream, I don't want to do that. And also because I enjoy antagonizing another person. But I think it's a mixture.
Like it.
So it could be a bit brat.
Bratish, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Be a bit of a bratish.
Yeah, but I'm not
role.
selling, so.
Interesting.
But you see, this is what I mean. But you see, most of the things we do isn't rational. It still can be fun. It still can be, So the point is, don't ever be pushed to explain themselves. But we need to be safe.
So you said to be yourself, but what if being myself is a fluid concept? Everyone seems to have very absolute ways of defining I'm the top, I'm the bottom, I'm this, and that. I'm new to this, and first of all, I find it utterly unsafe to put what I think into practice. Second, a lot of people are coming with partners. So as a unit that has multiple people, I'm coming on my own. So that makes it even more, that increases the feeling of being unsafe. What I'm realizing in this talk is that maybe I'm in therapy, I've done trauma therapy, I've done all of this. Maybe it's that I feel unsafe being me, but I don't know. Like, someone comes and in a dumb positioning, fuck you. Someone comes in a sub positioning, come on. So I just don't know. So right now, I don't know if that exists, but kind of kink paralysis.
because I don't know where to go.
To be honest, if you don't feel safe doing any kink play or so, you're entitled not to. You make the choice.
Yeah, but I'm impatient. I want this to be.
Hang on. But then you have to make a decision because, by the way, I also would recommend who are the other people. This is also contingent on this. The more you've got a play partner where you can actually feel safe, the more you're going to have a sense of yourself as well. And you're going to
How to find that safe?
you explore, you regularly exchange what you guys are into.
I mean, I hope you say it's not rational, but there is a flip side to it, saying that you have this gut instinct, everyone has it, and winning is particularly hard.
I was just about to say exactly what you
And if you ever feel that, listen to it.
Yeah.
And we're all, our animal brain and our sexual brain has a habit of overriding that instinct because we want something. Never let it do that.
But also, I think being a woman,
Yeah, but I was also going to say, because we've met, being a woman, I just know it's
heightened, isn't it?
It is.
Unfortunately, to bring gender into it,
Absolutely.
especially if you're a single woman, you've got
Yeah.
to keep yourself safe.
But on the flip side, if you take the kink out of it, how do you find the same? Do you find the same challenges with vanilla people? By just making friends generally, or coming into a new group.
Yeah.
Because then it's nothing to do with kink; it's to do with related to people. Because I have social anxiety, so I grew up with it. Which is why I do this. If people come to me, and I don't have to go to them. It's enforced socializing. That's why I do it. It works for me. That's why I volunteer at so many things. So that's the only reason I say it is because that was what it was for me. Is that I have an anxiety about people, and then the kink on top is the fact that obviously, if depending on the type of play you're doing, there's now, well, if I don't feel comfortable around people, how can I entrust my safety and sanity to another person? And so I always find that I had to do one before the other. I couldn't go into the kink before I got happy with. And the only thing I can say is that by coming to things like this, and where we met, getting to know people in a traditional way, you just have to be doing it in a kink context of just knowing people. Do you feel comfortable? Comfortable enough to go for coffee.
Give yourself the time to get to know each other properly.
So one extra layer that I have discovered in the small exposure I've had to the kink world is that being a black female, I can be a fetish also for people.
Yes.
And I've had so many people that have grossed me out just by feeling objectified and utterly fetishized.
You would go there.
And that's
You see,
Unfortunately, there are bad ends everywhere.
but you see, you would be all entitled to draw safe boundaries that keeps you safe accordingly. You just said it yourself. You can tell those people to fuck off. You don't like to be fetishized.
Is that
You don't
it?
like your culture, ethnicity to be.
Is that in person or online?
both.
And,
Both.
and here or elsewhere?
Here, London or here,
Here and now.
It's my first time.
Okay.
It's my first time, and it's the first time, and I've just booked for today because I was just like, blah blah blah. If I'm gonna say that, no way. But that's the reality.
Yeah.
I suppose being a single person, you've got to be able to vet. You have to have your own vetting system.
But there are types of people who are fetishized for all sorts of reasons. Hair color, size, skin color, ethnicity,
Anything to be
height,
affected.
weight.
Yeah.
And I think
you
you're
guys-
right.
And you guys are always entitled to decide how much you want to play along, if indeed at all. Remember, consent always means to say yes or to say no. You make decisions accordingly.
Also,
Go
I would say, I think if that's like a worry for you, like, because I've experienced that as well, like both online and personal. But if that's an issue you keep running into, and it's like making you feel like just like a little bit worried about like moving forward with someone who's like, oh, like, are they just like talking to me because they like my race, or are they talking to me because they like me as a human, or they want to play with me as a human? Exploring like with other black people can also like take away that worry while you're getting into it, and then like, you can develop your vetting procedures to be like, okay, if someone mentions this, or if they call me a Nubian goddess, then maybe I might not. Or like maybe if they describe me like
I don't know what it is about like these people, but like they'll be like, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah,
Go for it, go for it. Go for it.
I think the most unique compliment I ever got was like your eyes are like a shiny Malteser. And I don't know why it's all like that's such a random compliment.
So I got eyes and I got Malteser. What was the bit in between?
Shine.
Shining.
Like,
You've got eyes like shiny Maltesers.
I like a shiny Malteser, like a shiny,
like a polished.
shiny glass.
That's very specific.
Please tell me you went to a coffee.
Yeah.
Tragically.
It could have been great for the story of the guys that are too large and I hate it. I'm seriously, you're right.
Sorry, can I just ask for the recording? There's lots of
Not too many mixed voices, guys.
But I think you're right. In any environment, you've got valiants, and it could be
absolutely.
It could be. I've seen subs get smashed upon by doms or pseudo doms or dim doms, whatever you want to call it, and it would just think, oh, by virtue of my calling myself a dom, you must be my sub. Engage with people who will treat you first as a human being. Take from that place first. They can't do that.
Let me make a further suggestion how we can further cut down on weird or bullshit comments or comments when you're just simply uncomfortable with it. Go to Munches, come here regularly, be where you actually have got cases in front of you. You'll be so much more in control than when you're just exposed to weird and random messages online when you only got a string of letters. You'll be much more in charge. When you are at a munch, there's always a munch organizer you can always resort to when you're not feeling comfortable or safe. And this is how you can forge bonds that might be that's going to work much better for you.
And it's also as to what this.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
It does take time.
And also to what this lovely lady said is that if you come into a place where you see a lot of people, you can see an average behaviour. So you can say, well, is this person a one-off, being a dickhead, or whatever version we're going to call for someone of any gender, or what's the average look like? We say we come in, we all know what we like, but what's the average behaviour? How people interact. Essentially, the way I go, if you wouldn't go up to a stranger and say it to them in a pub, then don't say it online. And that's what I always found out with people. Because that you'd introduce yourself to anybody in a queue at the post office in that manner. Here's my dick. Don't think so.
Yeah. You see, it's
I was also down
easy.
the fence, by the way, which is great. So if anybody ever sends you a dick pic, send them the link. In fact, it's now a criminal offence to send a penis.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Cyber flashing. It's called cyber flashing.
So unsolicited dick pics are now an
Yeah.
offence.
It's called cyber flashing. One more
Not
time.
just dick pics, but
You see, it's too easy
any genitalia. Sorry, but basically, don't want
you see, online particularly, it is too easy to dehumanize someone.
Yes.
Because you don't have the human bond, you don't see the facial expressions, you don't hear the voice. Whereas here, this is a safe space. You can always ask, you could always ask any of the other staff members. You can ask me, how can I have a chat with you? Of course. That is the point. So.
I was just going to say that going back to the stoplight system that you were talking about, it's a good way for people who are trying to get into the scene to realize that if you are a sub, usually the sub's actually the one in control of the scenes because they have the stoplight system. If you're uncomfortable with something, you say red, then it ends. It should end. But if you're thinking about dipping your toe in the water to test it, and you're actually ultimately in control if you are giving up some kind of
It was interesting because at Anatomy we just did we just did a workshop for bottoms. So the workshop of tidying the bottoms, and not many tops went. I did because I like to have both sides. But we did a really interesting exercise of just people are in a safe space, getting used to saying no to people. So it's just an exercise of going around, sitting in front of the person, ask them to say something, and they say no. Because a lot of people just don't feel comfortable just saying no to something.
Practice.
And so I found that was actually a fascinating exercise to watch. A number of people were just uncomfortable in the room with only 20 people, going up to somebody who was a stranger 10 minutes ago, but it is an exercise. We still couldn't say no, even in an exercise.
It's really hard in all areas of life. Like I say to my team at work constantly, when people say, "Oh, can we do this? Can you run this campaign? Can you do this?" And I'm like, "You should be saying no to those people.
Really good piece of
But
exercise.
how do they say no?
Practice saying no, and you don't need to explain it either. People have to accept when you say no. There's no grey area here. Speak up a bit.
Sorry, I was going to say, if you're trying to build your confidence in BDSM environments, going to even just cuddle parties, you can practice saying no. There's very good practice. Yeah, cuddle parties.
Yes.
I also feel that, you know, if you're whether you're a couple or single, you want to be able to play with people that can express if they're not feeling comfortable, because at the end of the day, if they don't and they go away from that, unpack it themselves, you're, no matter, as a human being, you're going to feel terrible and guilt. It's going to happen because you think, fuck, what have I done? But the thing is, we've all got to be accountable for looking after ourselves.
Have you heard of it? I was just going to ask if you'd heard of the drama triangle.
No.
Yeah. Oh,
It's really
it's
interesting.
part of transactional analysis. This is. I tend not to work with it because I tend to focus just on what it means to be a responsible adult. But there are innate, we call it schemas, pre-templates we subconsciously perpetuate. So some are the child, sort of victim mode, and some are the persecutors. And it usually, and the other one is the adult, and it usually bounces around. And inherently, we do perpetuate a pattern like this. And it's also in the situation we're in. It is quite
But
interesting.
also, I think that's where shadow work comes into it as well.
Yeah.
Because I've done shadow work recently. Because I think when I've done my shadow work, it's helped me to progress within my dynamic as an individual. Because I feel quite lucky as to how I was brought up by my parents. Because I'm like, my inner siren is so like this. And I'm like, was I actually gaslit as a child? I mean, we've all been gaslit, we all gaslight ourselves, we all know that. But I have to give it to my parents. Like, I know, and I think this is what's helped me sit here today, listening to everybody and contributing because of how I was brought up, because I'm very vocal, obviously. And very, very open and quite, I don't want to say quite authentic, like, actually I want to give this a go and I'm going to put a lot of shit on the line here to do this, but I'm going to talk and say, listen, let's do this, let's do that. So I think my upbringing has contributed to me to accept and try these new adventures in my life.
Life's there to be lived. You know, hence why I've emphasized, don't be afraid to leave your comfort zone. Sometimes we're just, I think the character things are, some are much more prone to stick to what they know, whereas us cases, we just rather go out there.
Well, it's easy, isn't it? It's easy to just stick with what you know than to change because it's safe.
Yeah, precisely. But many times it can be a false safety. People are feeling actually not happy and they're not quite aware that that is because they stick to what they've always have been doing. You know, yeah.
Well, I used to be an outdoor instructor and they said learning always starts outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Push yourself and challenge and find more
It
about
does.
yourself when you.
It does. And it also builds resilience. I do recommend try out new things. Take small steps, by all means, but do try out new things. Get to know a wide section of people. The more you guys are stimulated, the more you learn. You know. So.
There's a flip side to that. Don't let people tell you to try it.
Yes, that is right.
Can I just say, I've
You
also
decide.
find online, talking to some people online, it's really helped me to develop different methods on dealing with people, especially on, I'm sure, I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
FetLife. Like we had an experience recently from a profile who identified as a cuckboy. I wanted to listen to a podcast, Venus Cuckoldress podcast, because I know cuckolding is actually a relationship dynamic. You know, I think it gets thrown about a lot. But he was in sub frenzy. He was like, without even his consent, calling him honorees, you know, had an honorary for him. And you know, and you just like we want, and we tried to break him out of that. We're like, who's taught you this? Can we speak to you as a person? Because we're not, he just wants a pump and dump, or just a cheap thrill or whatever. And you know, you think to yourself, how have you got here? Who has taught you? I'm actually quite concerned for the way that you're throwing yourself about on these platforms.
Yeah, it's one of the pests about online communities is nothing is intimate, nothing is really sacred. How are you meant to be drawing boundaries clearly? The old Greeks used to know this. They had the distinction between oikos and polis. Polis, metropolis, the big city, the public life. The differentiation was opposite to this was the oikos, which is the family, the hearth, the kitchen, the more intimate indoors life. They realized how important it is that there needs to be some kind of a safe boundary. We're now online most of our social interactions. What's intimate online? How do you draw clear boundaries? You know.
Well, we can't. We say, listen, can you step out of this? And we ask questions. What's your name? Da-da-da. What's this? Da-da-da-da-da-da. But then they're staying in this sub-frenzy. And you're like, dude, like, there's plenty of time for that further down the line.
I need to get to know you as a human.
Yeah.
Do anything like
And you're going to have people who are not going to get it. Block
No, they didn't. I had to shut it down.
Block them.
I just like,
Seriously.
I'll give it 48 hours.
You need to be safe. Yeah.
And that's totally legit.
Seriously.
He didn't, so I shut it down.
Yeah.
Another reason why I've emphasized you'll be safer at munches. Anyone like this who would behave like this at a munch, which I would doubt, by the way, they wouldn't have the courage. But even if you could tell the munch organizer, I'm really feeling unsafe, this guy's really getting to me. I had to do this with my metal munch. There were a couple of people, I had to ask them, you can't come here anymore. I had barred you before, this is the reason. Finish your pint and then off you go. You know, at least you will be safer at munches when you have personal interactions like this, as opposed to being online, especially women are particularly sort of soft the target. All of my female kings of clients, they always said men are ridiculously predatory online.
Can be.
I'm right with it. But the thing is, like, I'm a bit of a catfish queen. Like, I've just like, they'll do the whole hello, and I'm like, delete. And I don't even engage anymore, because they especially men, you know, I had it the other day on Instagram. I proposed about something, and he made a comment about it, and I'm like, you're saying that because you want me to react, because you want to start engaging for your own sexual gratification, and the best thing to do is just delete it and move on.
A client of mine purposefully put a women-only thread on Fed Live, lesbian and women presenting, full of guys.
Yeah, I was surprised.
What did you not get at the headline? It says women only.
Straight men are even now getting onto Grindr because some women are on Grindr, and so they're there to find the women who are on Grindr, and it's like, why?
But
Just leave
also,
it.
some
They have a
women
really bad
actually.
reaction if you mention they're not knowing that they're straight.
Yeah. Same in gay clubs as well.
Yeah,
I
I was about
know
to say
straight
this.
men that go to
This
gay
is usually
clubs.
what causes fights
To hit
at
on
gay
women.
clubs.
Wow.
You've got straight guys who are
Oh, yeah.
focusing on the girls
Yep.
who are there with their gay friends.
Someone
I've
also
seen
said
it
to
so
me.
often.
Someone also said to me yesterday. He was talking to a bloke, and he actually says that there are some straight people, straight guys that are identifying as bisexual on things like fab swimmers, FetLife, so that they can get in with the women and all that. And it's just like the lengths,
The deception.
honestly.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You will be safer in Manchester and in a place like this as opposed to online. You know, instantly block as soon as you're not feeling safe, either on FedLife or any other online media. You've got to be safe.
Sorry, I was just trying to say earlier that I don't know about online because I deleted most of my pet profile.
Good.
It just basically says stuff off, and now I put the event at 95. But also just in real life about like saying I had to get over kind of feeling rude about it, saying because back in like a baby kink like 6 years ago, but I let people get too far, and I didn't recognize like the beginning of the interaction and shutting it down now. And what really helps, and I don't recommend it because they're horrible places, but I like to go to places where lots of swingers are, and they're different people. Okay, so I had to practice a lot, like just step outside of my personal space, or like don't get too close to me, or you're breathing in my ear, or you know, shutting down like the little tiny signs before it gets too far, even just saying stop staring at me, or like you've followed me to the last 3 paces, or whatever it is. So like practicing for me, like being rude a little bit to people who I thought deserved it was actually really helpful. And like I don't get the shit now because they don't get that far.
Again, the practice of saying no.
Yeah.
As soon as you're not feeling safe, say no. Off you go.
There was someone told me a story. They were in a swingers club. I can't remember who it was ages ago, and they were in an orgy room or something, and it's quite a small club. And then I think there was quite a lot of like voyeurs coming in, and there was this woman on this bed, and she was just, as much as she was playing, she was multitasking. She was going, no, and she was being so forceful, like, no, leave your hands in. I'm like, how the hell do you do that and try and have fun at the same time? But she owned it.
Sean, you could back me up on here. This is a running discussion among kinksters and swingers. There are differences. Swingers aren't good in drawing boundaries. That's
it's an interesting one. It's one of the things I've observed. So first I think probably in the 90s. So yeah, I'm sure I mean.
Yeah.
And there was a balance between two, cycling and swinging legs. And I just, at the time, it's probably still now to a certain degree, swingers don't like kinky people, and kinky people don't like sex. Well, because you'd see it. If you had an impact play in a swingers club, you'd probably get ejected.
No.
Depends on the weekends. It depends.
If you're going involved, then they'll kick you out.
So there's the thing. It is a depends. So when it's a depends, it's down to whoever's running it's rule book.
They have done this.
They do, and so it does to that effect. But then on the flip side, it used to be, back in the probably still now, with the exception of probably one club, you're not allowed to have sex on site because of the rules of the venue.
Yeah.
And like we have here, female presenting nipples are not allowed to be got out, but men can go around topless. It's the rules of the venue. So a lot of swinging clubs are actually held on private ground. Therefore, there's no rules except the ones they set. It's just I always liked the blend of the two, but I always found that swingers were never that good on hygiene, as in cleaning stuff after they've used it, people. But it's an aspect of human condition that it can be actually interesting to see, because the horror story I get, the reason I gave up going to swinging clubs was I went into a club, and it really actually, I can still remember it now, it's like 25 years ago, so it did traumatize me, in the fact that there's the orgy room, and there was a lovely couple having a really intimate time, and they were allowed voyeurs, except down the side of the room, there was literally 4 couples lined up like whippets going for a race. The women were head down, they had their skirts flipped up, the guys were stood behind them with their trousers down and their shirts flapping in the wind. They might as well have been shagging a watermelon, for all the respect they're giving their parties. And I just thought, this is disgusting. I leave it, I never went back to another swingers event, ever.
With swingers especially, you're unlikely to have a proper sit down and discuss what exactly you and the other one is into.
The sheer fact that
there won't be much discussion.
At a swingers I went to once, they had hazard tape around the edge to say that's as close as you're allowed to stand unless you're invited, which tells me people have got a lack of self-control. And then again, you still do actually see it downstairs. Remember, people are not so much getting in the way, but are unaware of back swing. That's always entertaining. And it's one of the things we say, it's on your own cognizance to be aware of things that are flying around. So it's more down that end of the room.
Also, the thing is, with swingers events, I don't think there's much of a culture of what's the safe code here, what's the safe word. Traffic light system, what do you guys use?
Usually it's no and fuck off, as you said. Or when I actually, for a friend of mine, because she wanted an orgy, I policed it to make sure that only the guys who invited in jumped on the bed.
Right.
And we made sure they all put on condoms because she wasn't going to be in any condition to be aware of that. So we turned it in, we applied BDSM rules to that scene to make sure that she was safe so she could enjoy it and forget about it.
I mean, we've not been in this scene for very long, but I have found that there are, we are going to swingers clubs, and you do get like some swingers that go and they're kinky and they do like the impact play and they're into all that kind of stuff as well. So sometimes it sort of crosses overall gels or molds together. But there are, I've read up a lot on how the swinging world is working at the moment, and there are safe words. I mean, it's not all. I know it's not all ethical, and there are still people that are practicing swinging that are very old school with how they proceed to do their swinging. But there is a lot of like safe words and traffic light systems.
Changed a lot since
It has changed. It has
Good.
changed a
That's
lot.
good.
It
But
has to. It has to.
we'll find out. Won't we?
It's socialising outside the events.
That's nice.
That's the important message.
Yes.
Oh no!
She was just being shy.
Have you checked your consents? Whatever.
I was gonna say,
Speak up. Again.
oh, no, it's alright. Because I'm kind of, I always get a little anxious to help myself. Sorry. I guess what I'm trying to say is I have experience in both kind of one of the swinging and the
Yeah.
and there are some, I think, more private parties that have explicit rules.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Yes.
explicit,
Yes. Just makes-
conceptions and separate things,
absolutely.
rather than the actual like official places like the clubs and
Yeah.
all that. I find that mostly private parties
Yeah.
that offer certain things are now kind of allowing
Yeah.
consent and rules, and they have strict guidelines.
Yeah,
And if you
absolutely,
do
yeah.
those things, you're immediately kicked out.
I
So-
feel like
It's the-
KV like.
It's the event and how it's run is how it attracts that type of person.
Hence why most kink events have got some kind of house rules,
Yeah.
like Club DV8 or Verboten or whatever. So
Yeah, I do run one to the private party, it's a sex party, and on the last one, they actually had safeguarding at rooms. So when couples or groups of people going into that room, have you talked about what you're agreeing to do, what you're not agreeing to do? Have you got a safe word involved? And just give them a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
not so much before
Yeah.
they went in. It's
Like a mediator.
you can say stop at any point, read at any point, and if we don't say things stop, we'll be in that room making things stop.
Yeah.
it doesn't work otherwise. So
Talking about multiple partners, ethical non-monogamy is something I wanted to talk about because although I feel confident that my connection with one person isn't really impacted by my connection with somebody else, I still find it can sometimes be distracting if you suddenly become aware of somebody else's partner, like one of your partner's partners, and I haven't found anything to really understand how to navigate that.
you relentlessly sit at the table and discuss it regularly and draw the boundaries, especially when you feel someone is overstepping the mark. Tell the person, tell everyone involved. And I would recommend have regular discussions. Maybe pick a nice Friday, Saturday afternoon after lunch, and discuss whatever needs to be explored. The more clarity you can bring into this, the clearer you can set the boundaries, and then go over it again the next week. And in fact, I would recommend whatever you guys have agreed with your play partner, with your polycule member, confirm it in writing. Set up a WhatsApp group. Whatever you guys have agreed on, confirm it in writing. And then next week you can go over it again, ask the other ones what went well, what didn't went well, what needs more practice, are there any boundaries that need to be redrawn again. It's an ongoing process.
It constantly evolves.
It constantly evolves, absolutely. All of our relationships, they're living organisms just like us. By the way, this is sort of the slight rationality that indeed comes in, us needing to take the initiative and take charge and sort of step out of our comfort zone and say, actually, this is where you have overstepped the mark. Shall we look into this? And the more you stick this out, the more confident you'll be. And you get it, and you also are going to have a much more firmer sense of your own selves. But as I said, it does take time. communicate. There's no way around it.
Communication is key.
Especially as men, we need to. I do
A
think.
lot of affirmation.
Yeah.
Affirmation.
Affirmations.
Sorry.
Affirmations.
Affirmation. That ain't even a word, is it?
Affirmations and
It's a great word.
it's a really nice word. Affirmations and validations. Us guys, we have a slight tendency to be the providers, still the fixers.
This is what I find, because I would like to expand our dynamic to like a plus one, but also I'd like to be able to go off and have my cake and eat it. But that's something that is we're not going to rush into. It might never happen. He's my priority, but it's like, how do you make those first steps to be able to approach it where my husband feels comfortable with me going off and doing my thing?
This is going to be especially for this is going to be a trust issue. Especially you will want to know that he can trust you. Inherently, is this, and you regularly bounce it off each other and affirm yourselves.
It's not that I don't trust her; it's I don't trust the other person because if there is trauma.
Yeah.
And I was with her when this trauma happened, and it is an inline thing.
Yeah.
I can only say from past experience, having been looked at that aspect, I found it again depends on where your head is. Sometimes actually be able to go out as a throuple, either to a club, so you can watch the interaction, and then move to you want to go and do separate. So sometimes best to experience it together, or even vicariously, or even upstairs and downstairs in the same house. That way, you haven't got that distance, and you can regularly check. And it depends on whether that would dampen it for you or exciting it for you. So it's that's certainly one of the ways we looked at it, so that there wasn't that worry about, oh, they've now gone out the door, they've driven 5 miles, have they made it there okay?
I also would suggest see if you can meet the guy.
Oh, 100%.
Oh God, yeah, I wouldn't. It
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
have
obviously,
to,
and that's
what I'm saying.
Involved.
I'd have to vet them just as much as she.
Yeah.
I want him to have a form of rapport with said man or woman that he feels, because you like he unfortunately and you can either he finds men icky. I'm speaking for him now, but because he wouldn't say it out loud, he finds men really icky, and I can completely see why, especially unfortunately when you get the wrong kinds of men. You know, the lifestyle, whether it's swinging or BDSM, is saturated with men and couples, and it's generally
predatory men. Sadly, I think this might be the underlying worry as well. Yeah.
But that's a worry for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
inherently it's teamwork. Work together and stick with it. I think you'll know when you guys are being safe enough, when you guys are feeling confident enough here. And again, don't rush this. I know I sound like a broken record.
You can never say it enough.
No. It is challenging though when the excitement level comes in and you want to experience it on that rush, but the potential of it going wrong on the other side of that rush.
Sometimes it is a good idea to rein it in. And this is where the adult brain
that's that safety element of your safety goes out the window, because all you're thinking about is your genitals.
It's like comedy one. If there's a Matrix style Rio.
It's like cobbly one, you said.
It's like comedy. Rio's, and I've been in there. One of my best times in there was I was going to a bit of a sauna, go on my own. Right, I will socialise and chat with people, not a problem, not predatory like some of the guys. And I've gone past this couple sat there opposite, and he's oiling her up, and getting more and more. The guy's actually sitting opposite, which if I was a couple, I would have felt really awkward about. I've shuffled past this, and I'm almost sitting in the corner going like, shit, yeah. And eventually, they sort of upped it, and this guy leaves, and I'm like, what did that for? Fucking go until you fuck off. And then I got a brilliant chat with them. And yeah, they told me about silly games that you play. Like send the guys, she'll go to the sauna at the end, the jacuzzi at the end. And then you watch the guys in the sauna go, and then you just don't go. Or you walk round in the circles round.
I would have just intervened. And I would have just said, mate, can you just stop it? You're making us all unsafe.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable.
practice saying no. You don't have to put up with the behaviors of other people, especially if they're close with you. You know,
Some of the comments of that basically.
Yeah. You don't have to put up with that.
I mean, it's obviously all very contextual. Where you are at the time. I mean, if you're in a club or a venue, you usually have places that either have a closed door, you can go behind a rope that's monitored. We have that here. If it's out in public, well, you're going to get chatted up at the bar at any time. People just, so let's just face it, some men are just animals. They're walking out of breakfast like that. But the good thing is that after all this, there's still, you see around here, the people that are here, there's still the positive side. There are the right people out there sometimes. Sometimes you're lucky and you wander straight into them first go.
I do find that the vanilla world is I feel a lot more unhealthy in a way, because we don't learn consent. We don't learn, especially men, like we don't learn to tell and communicate how we're feeling.
We used to, see, for the roadies.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask the question, as a therapist, have you seen it? I mean, we always say it's better in my day, but has manners and the conditioning of men eroded in the last 20 years?
I would say all in all it possibly has, especially during the age of the internet,
Yes.
with the blurring of the boundaries between what is meant to be public and what is meant to be private. Traditionally we had this, we don't anymore. What does improve slightly, subcultures like ours, we have more and more. You have the trans community, you have the Kingston community, the LGBT community, and among ourselves we talk, and that is useful. But all in all, as a society, no, I'd say we're regressing at the moment. Politically, socially, it's
What
The
would
one
be
thing I
fair to
always,
say?
yes, I mean, the one thing I always said about the internet, the nice thing about it is you can be anonymous and you can be whoever you are and whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
The flip side of it is because you are anonymous, you have zero accountability.
that's the thing. And it can still be a massive perpetrator to an innocent one at the other end of the line.
And to your point of political stuff, I think that's how certain political individuals have gained as much support as they have.
Absolutely.
People coming out of the woodwork and going, oh, there's a community of people that think like me.
Someone
And it
once said,
validates their view.
before the internet, we used to have a village idiot. Now that idiot runs entire countries, thanks to the PR machinery that you can see easily set up online. It's really dangerous.
So, 2 minutes? Don't say anything else.
I was just going to feed in that the shift from the pandemic and people's behaviours, negative behaviours, has also been something.
Well, a lot of people picked up pinky stuff over the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, OnlyFans.
I mean, Craig and I know this. The number of people who picked up shibari during the pandemic is unreal.
Yeah, there was a huge uptake in Instagram, shibari, rope work, out of street. Massive
France had record sales during the lockdowns of dildos and wine.
Excellent.
Vive la France! Vive la France!
Vive la France indeed.
So, right, guys, thank you so much. I've been Hal, aka Kebab Punk. I'm on Fifth Live, and just ask me, Hal, what the fuck were you talking about? So, actually, that's fine. Something else I also mentioned, really sorry, if you don't want your voice to be on here, let Sean know.
Well, it's too late now because it's been recorded. But
sorry.
usually what we would